So at almost 5:30, I'll call the November 27th Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District meeting to order, and let's get started with meeting minutes.
I make a motion we accept the minutes from the November 13th, 2018 meeting as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion to sign the payroll and manifests as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sheila. Sign a few things.
Thank you. Elbow pain.
So you want them copies or I
I could have noticed that.
I've got this for you too.
Oh, how did I miss that?
They
Yeah.
all have this, but I don't know if they've seen it recently.
I've got everything.
Yeah.
Send that your way. This can go to the bottom.
My proposal is sheets that he's gonna go over. You guys have all seen that, but I just, in case anybody wants to
Right.
refresh.
Yep. Is this just for you, or should I put this with
I don't even know
Bob
what it
stuff?
is.
Bob's hearing.
Supplemental.
That's for,
Yeah. All right, so on to new business. Let's start off with the rate study proposal.
So
you all know Mike Terrio.
Mike Terrio with Wright Pierce. We've been doing a lot of work for the district over the past few years, and I was just in discussion with Mel late this summer and early fall, and got into talking about preparing for not only the long-term water and sewer loans for the 2018 improvements that were funded through rural development and DES, but also talking about interim financing. How do we get to that long-term note where you can close it with the Fed or the state? And in those discussions, what became apparent is that you guys were looking at needing to adjust your user rates to be able to afford that in the long term. Worked with Mel and Jason to do a brief analysis of your existing model, and the existing model has some difficulties in that it charges a very uniform flat rate to all your users regardless of the connection size or the usage, and then beyond that flat rate charges a usage rate. It's a very simplistic model in terms of, it's good for handling your typical O&M expenses, some debt service moving forward, but given the degree of debt service that you're going to be looking at over the next 2, 3, 4 years as these infrastructure improvements are implemented, it really warrants a more sophisticated analysis of a water and sewer rate study. One that not only provides a pathway to how do we get from our user rates now to what's sustainable when we close in that rural development note or the New Hampshire DES note, but doing it in a stepwise approach so we don't have one big increase. We want to prevent sticker shock to the users, not only for the district, but to make sure it's fair for them. The other part of getting into that pathway is to look at a better rate model, one that distributes that debt service across the users in a fairer way. For example, by having just the single flat rate for all users, if rates were to double, a standard residential rate annual bill would double, but a larger commercial user, somebody that uses a lot more water, they might only see a 5 or 10% increase. So the burden for that debt service under your current model is getting borne by the residents, and it creates an unfair distribution moving forward, and might, there could be a lot of pushback or a lot of people in hardship. So what I think, when we've been working with municipalities and we create a new rate model going to a tapered flat charge, when we spread that debt service over that flat charge, so the residential customers might increase 30% annually, but we're also trying to get that 30% out of the larger users too. So it spreads that debt more uniformly. Just as an example, so what we had done at the beginning of this month, we had submitted a proposal to the district to do a water and sewer rate study. I see that you have a copy of the proposal right there. This is an example of the deliverable that we would envision working on the district. This is a direct model from another community in New Hampshire, another water and sewer district, not a town or city. And as you can see, right at the top, the first thing that jumps out is that there's a different flat rate for each size meter. And that's something that's easily implemented. You guys already have records of the meter sizes here. And your larger users, you're bringing in a lot more income. So for example, on this community, somebody that has an 8-inch meter is paying 70 times the amount of flat charge than your standard residential household. These ratios can vary from district to district or town to town. There is an AWWA standard, a recommended standard that we would start with, and then, as we develop the model, make some adjustments so that when this debt service gets applied, as you need to project your revenue, that we can show these increasing in a fair way, meaning it's not all put, the majority of the burden is not put all on the smaller users. Also with that deliverable, we've got some sample bills. So page 2, when we develop this model, we can not only show what an example bill would be for, let's say, 2019 or 2020, but our proposal we're proposing to do a 5-year model, so we can show what that impact will be over the next 5 years until we've closed on that note. And we can also throw in state averages as well, so you can see where the district would compare to some of the other communities in the state. As part of this sample bill, we look at, okay, what's a standard residential unit? How are their bills going to change? And then we'll pick a handful of your larger users. So, if you wanted to see what, the car wash out on Tenny Mountain Highway or one of the Plymouth State buildings would be over the next 5 years, we will project that and, work with the district until you're comfortable with the model. And then, at the end of our study, we'll give this model and train the district on how to update it in the future. So it'll be a lot easier to adjust. We need about, to set this up and get all the data, roughly a month. And once that's set up, work out some kinks, some of the details. And so you're looking at like a month and a half, 2 months to having a fully functioning rate model moving forward.
Well,
Mike, back on page 1, so the 5/8, that's basically a household?
Yeah, and so for this particular community, the majority of the residences were 5/8 inch meters.
Okay.
And obviously, we would adjust this for, Plymouth to a village specifically.
Go ahead.
well, thank you. As I said to Mel last week when we were discussing this, reflecting on the proposal, I think I have like one question, but asked 5 different ways, and that, I mean, that is, more or less, we're looking at raising rates significantly, because we have to. And, I mean, we have our community is such that we have almost all residents. We have a handful of what I would say is small commercial, like restaurant. And then we've got 3 or 4 big users. And no matter how you slice this pie, I'm seeing, we did some calculations, say, on the university. It is an enormous increase to them. And if we,
Weren't we figuring like 66% or something weird?
Already, just in our current rate structure, we're increasing by hundreds of thousands of dollars to the university. And, I mean, it seems like it's a different number of hundreds of thousands of dollars, with the rate study. I'm not against doing this by any means. I think there's a lot to be learned from it. But, my concern is, we're not concerned about the next 5 years, we're concerned about the next 30 years, because our rates would have to go up. It was going to take that long to pay down our current,
Well, the new debt.
that
Right.
we're talking about. So,
And
the money's got to come from somewhere. If we're going to reduce, I think it would be great to be able to, for senior citizens who are minimal users, to be able to have some relief. But who's going to pay for that the money that they're not paying for?
and there's, I also think that, right now under your current rate model, the first 5,000 gallons per quarter are free. I think that's lost revenue for the district.
Yeah, how do you
It's minimal, it's
figure
not free.
free?
It's minimal charge.
Yeah, but rebalancing to a tapered flat rate and then charging from gallon 0 up, I think the district will be able to recover some of those monies, and that will assist with affording the new debt service. Moving forward, so year 1 of these loans is going to be the most difficult year. These funding agencies do a level principal payment rather than a level payment type repayment schedule. So as the debt gets older, the annual payment gets less and less. However, inflation is happening, and costs for operating and maintaining the system might slightly increase, as well as capital improvements or capital reserves. So as that debt gets smaller over the course of time, you're building more in your piggy bank to be able to afford. Okay, we have other replacements further on down the line.
Right.
We have
Right.
more operating costs. So it's that first year that's the most difficult to swallow.
Right.
Absolutely. And with the work that we've done, we've gotten nearly 40% grant funding for this infrastructure work. With the way interest rates are in this grant package, I'm not sure the district will ever see a comparable offer. So the improvements, the infrastructure that's involved in this are the most critical. They're the primary water transmission mains. They're the primary sewer interceptors, your largest pump station in the system. This is controlling what Plymouth will become in the future, meaning development downtown, the ability to make fire flows, and development along Tenny Mountain Highway.
Go ahead.
My question is just basically, I'm still trying to wrap my hands around this whole, the smaller users are supplementing the larger users. And I have a hard time wrapping my hands around that, because they're all paying for water. And we're all technically paying the same rate. So if you use more water, you pay more. And is this kind of structure going to be where if you use more water, you're going to pay a lot more, so that it wouldn't be equitable to a smaller user. You know, I don't wanna turn the tables. Like, I wanna make sure that if we do this, that it is equitable across the board.
Right now, under the current rate model, almost all of your debt service is put on that flat rate. So that's the big sticker shock. When we analyzed what this would look like under your current rate model, that flat rate would astronomically increase
Okay.
over the next 3 years, where the usage charge changes a little bit, but not significantly.
Okay.
So because that flat rate would be changing, the flat rate being what the revenue that's paying for that debt service. Take a standard residential house, rates might double by the time we get 3 or 4 years down the
That's-
road.
Right,
that is what
which is what we're seeing,
Yes.
right?
And so that flat rate is gonna be the majority of their annual user rate. Not much coming from the usage. Take a commercial
Okay, got it.
business, take a commercial business has really high usage, a much larger meter. Right now, they're paying a lot more from the usage charge than the flat rate charge, so their annual fee will go up marginally because that flat rate is increasing, but the usage charge isn't really changing.
Okay.
Under
So
the-
we're putting the wrong fee to be the primary driver.
And so generally, what we found that has worked in a lot of communities throughout New Hampshire and a lot of water and sewer rate districts is when we develop the flat rate fee structure and the usage structure, we want those pools of money to pull in the same amount of revenue. So if we're making, and I'll use this for an example, on page 1, if we're pulling in $190,000 in flat rate fees, we want to be pulling almost the same thing in usage rate.
I see that from everybody,
And
right?
what that does is it takes that high burden of a flat rate and puts more of it over to the usage charge. So yes, if
If you
somebody
use more,
uses a lot more water, they will pay more. But it's not all put in that flat rate burden.
Okay,
Do you,
And this 50-50 scenario has generally worked very well over the state.
okay.
does it change people's water usage behavior?
It can, it absolutely can, because not only is this affecting water, it's affecting sewer. So the first couple of years after this gets implemented, you might see a 10% reduction in usage. Absolutely.
Because conservation suddenly makes a lot more, you have an incentive there.
And the conservation is another
We've
part.
seen that in the past.
The conservation is another part that you need to be aware of. So one of the parts of this project is the new Holderness well water supply. New Hampshire DES currently requires a water conservation plan. That will be required before you're allowed to make a large withdrawal from that new water
Oh,
supply.
this is news to this board, I believe.
And
To tell us a little bit about that.
part of that water conservation plan will also include the breakdown of your billings and rates and water structure. I'll leave this example plan. We just prepared one for Rye Water District, but DES is specifically interested in the tapered flat rate charges as part of the water conservation plan. If all of a sudden water usage dramatically drops off, they want to make sure that you're financially
We're gonna still-
sustainable to maintain this water supply.
All right, so next question is, given our current rate structure, could we theoretically submit a water conservation plan?
That would be acceptable.
That would
You
be acceptable, in my
could.
opinion.
You could, but I think it would be a little bit offset. I really think the water and sewer rate study is necessary and strongly recommended moving forward.
Okay. Well,
This is
I'm
an
really
education.
appreciate
Yep.
you coming in because you've shed light on some topics, well, mainly the conservation plan that we were not aware of, so.
And that's kind of a new thing in recent years with DES, but for any new major water withdrawal, this is, it's one of the contingency plans that goes into the
Right.
program.
No, it makes sense, it does make sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
Yeah. course, puts more financial burden on us to comply with all of this, but, I mean, it,
Hey.
yeah,
They want to make sure everybody has their ducks in a row before
Right.
you can start pumping.
Right.
well,
That would have been nice if.
I think it's
Did you
on
know
page
about this?
I
9.
didn't know about
Yeah, I
it.
didn't think so.
Page 9 of that, or page 10, has the Rye Water District's breakdown. And they also compare actually the previous page.
It was
Right,
that,
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
that one
Yeah.
right there. Not only do they look at Rye, they look at Portsmouth, because they're interconnected. So-
right, I see, okay. Well,
So I guess the question for everybody is what Mike just described to you, what you hope to get out of the proposed rate study?
Right.
Or do you have other things you'd like to see in it, or?
I understand one of the critical pieces is needing to set 2019 rates, and it's probably too late to be able to
Yeah, no, that
meet
is-
your
Right.
public hearing requirement. But if we got started on this, we could certainly have results by the district meeting in March.
right,
So we would be able to present rate structures for going forward.
We don't do it at annual meeting, though.
Oh, that's true.
By then, bills are out for the year.
Right.
You could talk, you could talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, I guess the next
I mean-
question, if we don't have any specific questions for Mike, is, do we want to act upon this evening, or do?
As a budgetary matter.
Right, or do we want to, since we have a number of other, we've got people here and other issues this evening, do we want to hold off until next meeting?
Well, next meeting's gonna be the hearing, so,
Well, it's next week, so we'll have time.
okay.
I mean, there are
Gives
other
us-
budgetary decisions that you want to make tonight, or?
Right,
or-
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd like to reflect a little bit
okay.
on this. I don't
It's,
know.
it's in the
Well,
proposed
taken.
budget now. The numbers appear in the budget
Yeah.
at this point.
Mhm. Any further questions?
Nope.
Well, we do appreciate you coming in, Mike. I realize
thing.
it's, some ways it
Helpful.
seems like a short
Helpful.
presentation, but,
Long line.
yeah.
Yep.
And if you have any questions that develop over the next week,
Yeah.
just, circle them through Mel and we can respond, so.
Yeah, good. We have more than our usual on the plate right at the
Yeah.
moment, so
Yeah.
I find it hard to, always find time quiet moment to just reflect on what we need to be thinking about, so.
Sure.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Safe travel.
Drive safe, yeah.
Are you gonna stay for this?
I am.
Good, thank you. Why don't we use that?
All right, so I'm gonna leave this.
Sheila,
How are you?
good.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Hey,
Charlie.
That's Such short notice.
Hey, Steve.
Just coming to you.
I'm not seeing your hand.
Hi there, Sheila.
Yeah, we'll just wait.
All right, so next up is the RMI proposal on dewatering equipment for the wastewater treatment plant. And
I do.
Come here.
Yep.
this is a timely matter because we have been discussing
Budget.
other options,
With-
options in the budget for this very issue, and so we decided to.
I brought just a two-page summary.
Okay.
So I did read most of the PDF that you all sent over,
Great.
and I don't have those questions in front of me, but I had sent back to Mel and Jason some of my specific questions.
Yep.
I think Jason relayed them to Sheila
Yeah.
this afternoon.
Yep.
Yeah, the main ones, I don't want
No, go ahead.
to,
I read.
the main one
also.
was that the unit you were proposing was like right at a capacity for our needs, and, does it allow, do we need to be allowing for any future growth? Right, especially if we're having our septic receiving, we hope we have some growth in our septic receiving, so.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah, right, so
So we basically spoke.
so that's a big question.
And we've addressed it. We've
And then,
spoken.
and then, just, sorry to cut you off, but then the other one is just, are we, budget-wise, money-wise, how does this compare with our other options?
Gotcha. So we spoke with Jason earlier today and confirmed that the septage program is here to stay. If you were to look at your generation numbers for the last 12 months, you had a major bump starting 2 months ago in terms of production numbers. And so I asked Jason, is this the new reality? And it is. So we designed a dryer that's bigger, that would allow for growth and will allow for things like the Littleton material coming in on short notice. You could still be able to process it. So we are at a point now where instead of being 890 tons, it would be 2,160. So that gives you ample room
Whoa,
for
yeah,
growth.
going.
But that's actually not a huge amount, Judy, because that's only based on 180 tons per month. So there's usually 30 tons in a load, and so that gives us room for 6 loads a month very comfortably. We were doing it based on 2 to 3 loads a month, because that was your reality.
Right.
But it's double. So now we would look at having...
Right,
the-
but you've gone from something that's about 900 tons, so you've given us more than double the capacity of what we would.
Yes.
Okay.
And so these little handouts, I changed the numbers on that in terms of, on the second page, numbers of truckloads and the reduction that it would be relative to this new sized based on Jason's current.
Just so you know, Judy, the last 2 months, from the period August 24th through October 23rd, you averaged 183 tons per
Okay.
month.
So
perspective.
we have been looking at dryer technology for a couple of different reasons. There's been a lot of changes in our industry relative to how biosolids are managed. And one of the things in my 30th year of doing this, I can tell you, is that trucking water is just not good for anybody.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And so in the past, the dryers that have been used, the conventional dryers here in the States, have been very high electric consumers.
Yes.
And very high. So this technology uses somewhere between 160 and 200 kilowatt hours per ton of sludge it dries. Conventional ones use 600 to 800.
Right.
So this particular technology caught our eye. And we said, hey, this really is looking more affordable. So that was one piece. The other piece of it is that we've been under pressure, which I don't know how much you know or want to know about, but the PFAS,
Right.
okay? So I am really concerned about our future for recycling in general over that particular topic. It's the perfluorinated compounds, PFCs, down at Pease Air Force Base.
Yeah, the
They got
PFOAs.
Sink
Yeah.
over
PFOAs,
Right.
Yeah, so those are in every wastewater system because those chemicals are in everything that we wear, that we eat, the Scotch Guard on our couches.
The evil of plastic.
It is. It's been a wonderful thing for us for 40 years.
Right.
But now they're saying in our state that the drinking water standard is going to be 70 parts per trillion or maybe lower,
Right.
maybe down to 20 parts per trillion. The DES is fast and furious trying to find the right number for risk management and all
Right.
of that. In the meantime, someone said, well, hey, if it's in wastewater, then it must be in biosolids.
Of course.
And if it's in biosolids, we better do something.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So we have gone and tested biosolids from all the different municipalities that we work for. It's at very low levels, but some people say any is too much. So that made the dryer even more compelling, not because it gets rid of PFAS or PFOAs, but because less is more. Because if we get to the point where we're not allowed to recycle, you surely want to reduce the amount that you have to manage through either disposal or incineration or whatever. As a recycler of residuals for 30 years, it breaks my heart to think that we might have to do this. But I want to manage the risk. I want to be prepared to do what we have to do if we have to do it. So, trucking less is a good thing. Trucking a lot less is a great thing. And so we're at the point where we said we need to have an opportunity to showcase that this works. And Jason always comes to mind because he's an innovator and he's willing to try new things and be successful. And you're our next door neighbor, and I'd love to partner with a wastewater treatment plant to do this. So that's why RMI said, well, why don't we put up the capital and we have that be managed in a way that a municipality can try it, see if you believe it. If it's a value, you buy it.
Right. Well, I mean, as you may be aware, we are in a...
Buying
a-
it could be painful.
Right, we're in a very difficult financial situation at the moment. We're at a turning point here as far as having to do a lot of capital improvement in the district
Understood.
and taking on a lot of debt service.
Yep.
So we're the board here is very sensitive about spending even $50. So,
Yep.
So what we want to look at is a comparison of our options, and we really need to see out the total cost of ownership here on both
Yep.
sides.
So what we propose is to charge a monthly fee for the installation of this that's equivalent to what you're currently paying. So you would feel no shift. You're
Mhm.
currently paying us to recycle your biosolids. We'll charge you a monthly flat fee, the same equivalent amount, and we'll take the dried solids, we'll develop a program for you, and a year and a half out, you can decide if you want to buy it.
Well, one other
That's-
key question I had from
cost
looking
is
through your
a year and a
materials
half.
is, I did a rough calculation on electric usage
Yeah.
for current usage, and came up with somewhere in the $18,000 to $25,000 a year,
Yep.
non-trivial amount of money. I mean,
Yep.
it's certainly more than the lime. Our lime is
Yes.
about half of that.
Yep, so we
Your-
discounted.
Your old line use. Don't forget, your tonnage has come up
Right, okay, so
significantly.
yeah.
So that, we were using $12,000 spent last year on lime. That would more than double. So you'd be up. But that aside, we actually were concerned about that as well. We
Yes.
did an analysis, and our analysis shows that the electrical cost, along with our management fee, would still be at or below what you currently pay for your all-in Class B and raw solids management program.
Right, okay.
So it'd be flatlined. And that doesn't include the added benefit of you can put the $80,000 you have budgeted for pug mill renovation a year out at this
Right.
point. So that's
For forever.
Right,
Do we need to still do the pug mill if
No, this product
This would-
would bypass essentially the lime process and the pug mill, which is used for mixing the sludge and the lime together.
So we have a great lime silo that we would then.
Yeah, we just spent a bunch of money repairing.
Bunch of money
Well,
repairing.
you know what, the thing is, if this works like the way we think it's going to for you, and
Okay.
we've seen this, I don't know if you've talked to them about going to China and all that.
No, this is the first time we've talked
Okay.
to the community.
So we,
We're going to China.
if you'd like,
A vacation is included. We cannot accept gifts.
this machine is made in China, and so it was brought to us by another professional in the field from the University of Arizona back this spring, and he knows we've been looking at Class A technologies for years, and quite honestly, there have been a lot of Class A technologies that just are non-starters. But this one caught our eye enough so that we sent a team over in August to the factory where they actually make these, and we went to see installations. And in big installations, like 300 tons per day, they're running through these dryers. And they're all over Asia and parts of Eastern Europe. And they work very well. They've been in making these since 2003. And we actually are familiar with a similar technology over in, we handle the biosolids out of Rensselaer County in New York, Troy, New York.
Yep.
They have an Italian belt dryer, and it makes a very interesting product. It's much more stable than some of the other dried products that we've managed over time.
For all my friends.
Which he brings.
This
I would've been
is
disappointed.
this is the dried,
bring us
yeah,
some
this is dried biosolids.
Oh my God, it's
through
like
Shinshi
grapple.
dryer. Yeah, it is.
That's
a great way to
over
do it.
90% solids.
Yeah. It's-
So your current
Even
cake,
with the
your current,
previous press, we couldn't do this.
yeah, your current cake coming off the press runs about 25%.
This brings it to 90%.
What was it before, when we had
When you had
the,
the compost?
with the big green monster?
God,
Lord.
that was sloppy.
Yeah.
That was sloppy.
That was even less.
It
Yeah.
was less?
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
17,
Yeah.
16.
okay.
So just for clarity here,
The brownie cakes that would come with that.
what's in it for you is reduced trucking costs, presumably.
What's in it for us is reduced trucking costs, but also we want to have, this would be the first unit in the United States on a permanent installation. So we have a demonstration unit out in Yuma, Arizona, but in order for me to sell these to other wastewater treatment plants, I need someone who's got a model that they can come and see it, and then we can run 5 gallons through.
Okay.
Yeah. And, Littleton is at a point where they'd really like to do this with us, and Dover would like to do this with us, but I want to do this with Jason. It's good neighbors, it's good relationship, it's going to be a learning experience. I want to work with a team that is right-handy and goes to it. And so that's why we said, all right, we're gonna take out a note and finance it and put it in and make this work.
Okay, so a couple questions. One was the lime silo, so what happens to that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were gonna answer it, so let's
It
just come back to that.
That just
So
came to me today.
We had toys
So
first.
we've been talking about how to handle the dried product down at Plymouth. And right now, we're leaning towards just filling 1 ton, what they call a super sack. Have you ever seen these big sacks on a pallet? They move fertilizer.
Yep.
Yes.
But a really neat way would be to put it in a silo. And you might be able to repurpose the silo for holding dried product.
Okay, that's good. How is odor?
So odor is a non-issue.
Better.
It'll be better than what you've currently
So it's
got
a
going on.
closed- it's a
'Cause
closed-
it's a closed system.
Yes.
And you're just dehumidifying. You're not changing the chemistry, you're just taking the water out.
Where does the water go?
Back to the headworks.
Okay.
It's about a gallon a minute, Jason, so 1440 a day. And the ammonia is 3 to 9%. We don't know until we use your material, but.
Regular filtrate is much higher than that.
Right.
Do you know what our ammonia percent is right now, Jason? Because,
For filtrate?
yeah,
It's probably, I want to say around 20 or 30.
wow, to reduce it even to 9,
We
Yeah.
still have filtrate coming off the press, but
Right.
this will be in addition to.
This could potentially dilute the material if you're circulating that back to the head of the plant.
Yeah, by
A little bit. It could also, that material could also eventually be certified for use on crops because it's free of pathogens. So that ammonia centrate could go and water Plymouth State fields, and you could sell them the water to water their soccer field, that kind of thing.
because it's basically fertilizer.
Yeah.
Nitrogen-based.
It's very low nitrogen, but it's clean water is what it is. And when you were talking earlier about your clean water plan, you can put this in it.
It's essentially.
Just saying, Mike.
Did you see that, Mike? Did you hear that?
I did, and I'm very familiar with this technology. Not as familiar as Sheila, but I sat through the initial pitch that they made to New Hampshire DES, so.
Do we want to receive some type of like high-level, proposal that's showing some, for us to make a decision, that's laying out, what.
So you
What are-
currently have a contract with RMI.
Yeah.
You're in the third of 5, 3, this is our third 5-year term. So this would cover that period of time for the biosolids management to continue with RMI. And as I said, we would simply manage it as what your current rate is and turn that into a flat monthly fee. And we lowered it somewhat to accommodate for the electricity costs so that you won't feel any shift. And I guess, what we'd want to do is work out some kind of agreement with the municipality, not a municipal agreement, but an agreement with the district relative to like an equipment lease,
Right.
And
Okay.
Fair enough. Yes.
not I don't want to overcomplicate this. I want to,
An memorandum
Right,
of
yeah.
understanding that, we're going to be utilizing this.
Yep.
And that after such a period of time as our contract ends.
Yep.
Then we have a decision and.
right.
Here are
And the
actual
beauty of it is that it's, because there's no construction to speak of, like you don't need another building addition, it fits, it's a plug and play. It fits right in the garage bay where our trailer is. So literally, we move our trailer, we bring in the unit, you've got to do the electricity
Right. The electrical
to
is.
connect.
Is it a 240?
480.
Oh, it's a big
But
one.
it will be an investment on our part to set up the electric.
Do we
Con-
know how much?
I'm estimating, depending on the switchgear size, we'd have to have an electrical engineer probably look at.
We just had a chance to talk about this this afternoon, and will need to be a little bit of an evaluation done on the electrical. Just if the current gear is capable of supporting a new unit this sized. I know we had a little trouble on the last project with electrical
So, but, you know, we can work out the details, certainly.
All right.
And then the other piece of it is that you're already have dewatering to pretty consistently at 25%, so that's, because these were designed originally for 20%, so he's already squeezing 5% out, so it's even less electricity than,
What
a
they
regular one.
traditionally.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna put this thing where the trucks go,
Mhm.
you're saying that then we're not using trucks anymore, we're gonna be using those pallet bag things
Right.
instead, whatever you call them,
Your super sacks.
super sacks.
Yep. To start with, because that offers you the most flexibility.
Okay.
And we've been talking about them, this is going to be a work in progress to a certain degree to
Okay.
see what works for the district
Okay.
and the setup you have.
Do we have any storage we have to worry about? Like where do we put this dry stuff? Like right now, the wet stuff comes and it goes right into the truck. So where does the dry stuff go?
Right. So the dry stuff can either go to our facility, or if we develop people who want to use this, like the old compost program,
Right.
then that would be your option to.
I think Judy's saying it's like staging. Does it have to be
Right.
undercover?
So right now, the super sacks would be, they're made so that they're leak-proof, they're waterproof
I
rather.
see, so they can,
So they can be stacked.
They're on a pallet.
We kind of work it out with Jason, what
Mhm.
makes sense.
And then you guys are gonna come and take those super sacks away, so
Right.
we're just, my vision is, okay, we're filling these up.
Yep.
So where are we storing them in the meantime before you pick them up? So that was sort of where I was going with
There
that.
would probably be enough room, I would say, in the existing trailer bay in front of the piece of equipment.
Yeah.
In
to
front of
store
it or
quite a
behind
few-
it?
Yeah.
You know,
towards-
the
toward the-
exit.
Toward the door.
Toward
side,
the
yeah.
exit, right,
To
okay.
store quite a few pallet-sized
Yeah.
bags. And that was also something, the provisions for, if the piece of equipment went down, you would
Right.
have backup under the last chute
Right.
to back a trailer in and dewater
Okay.
wastewater
Okay.
solids into that. So that's the contingency if the piece of equipment went down.
Yep. And, I spoke with Akram, and they thought installation would be 10 to 14 days, so it wouldn't be that long that we'd have to do the diversion. It can be attached to SCADA, doesn't have to be, but it can be. So the neat part about this is that it really fits well with a plant this size, because it doesn't require a whole lot of anything. You're connecting we'll put in a hopper in the back, so you have 2 days capacity there, and then that'll automatically feed into the dryer, and out come the pellets, and you're off to the races. So this is, it's also Class A, which
Gives you guys more
so
flexibility
that
for
gives us
selling
more
it.
flexibility
Like
for
your old
selling it.
compost.
Yep.
Yeah, and our permits we'll maintain them so that we can always go back to lime stabilization as a program. But this, I think, gives you a far better stable product, odor-free, hassle-free, and no water to truck. And trucking costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it does.
And it's not getting any cheaper. So I really feel like it's a good shift for everybody, for all treatment plants, and I think that you can be the leader. I think that's, there's, Jason's done some pretty interesting things, and I think this just sort of fits in with that line. And where it's not an ask for a buy, it's we're gonna stay at the same cost that you're currently operating at. And I think if you, at the end of this, in a year and a half, or whatever we decide on, you say, hey Sheila, all we need you for is the record keeping and reporting, all your costs have just gone away.
So, one final question. Can you tell, when you were deriving the electric cost, can you let us know what the rate?
10 cents.
You were using
I got that
10
from Jason.
okay.
The first time I did it at 14, and I was like, oh my God.
Right, because that
He
was
said 10
more or
cents
less
is-
the range I was using.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so we adjusted that in this, in terms of what those costs per day would
Okay.
be.
Okay.
And I honestly, I haven't even had a chance to talk, with Jason since we made the changes to the numbers, but I did run those based on the new,
Electric rates?
the new electric rate and the new septic capacity that he wants to encourage.
Right.
We talked a little bit about even getting some of those numbers for the winter up based on winter septic deliveries.
Okay.
And you know, I think that you can get more from, who's hauling in the Plymouth now, Lipton now?
White septic, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of pressure in the North Country as well that's gonna start trickling down
Yeah,
here.
we've been seeing quite a few haulers from north of the Notch recently,
Yeah.
due to Littleton being down.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
because it's a big, then you have Berlin or Colebrook, and that's just a long haul. It's
Mhm.
easier to come south.
Mhm.
Long cold haul.
Yes, right.
So I know you have a very busy agenda tonight, and we appreciate putting us in on short notice.
Thank you
Um,
for coming.
Yeah, we're really excited about this, and our goal is to fast track this because we want to order our dryer for use by you all before the end of the year. And
Oh.
ideally, we'd like to do it sooner because of the tweeting tariff war.
Yes, right.
Because that adds money that we can't control. And so the sooner we get our equipment in production, the better. The other funky
Right,
thing is that Chinese New Year, I guess everyone shuts down for like 3 weeks and eats, drinks, and be merry in China. But we'd like to get ours under production before that,
Mhm.
Okay.
so that they don't have the hangover model for us. So
Yep.
what I can do is work with Jason and Mel to develop, a little bit more formal arrangement or, some kind of a memo of an understanding about what that would be. But,
And budget numbers.
yeah. Well, I
So-
included that in there. It's a 13,000
So if our,
per month.
so the suggestion here
Well,
is that we
It's a
would,
different purpose. We just have to make some adjustments.
Okay.
We're not paying.
so are we headed towards perhaps a decision next week? Is that
Good.
potentially?
Yeah.
If we can see that memo in the
We meet again next week. right?
Yes.
Yeah.
next Tuesday.
Okay.
And I can
Would that
get
work?
with Jason and Mike and go over whatever, the cost would be relative to that.
Oh, the electric,
Yeah.
contract,
Working
yeah,
up,
engineering, yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, that's good.
That's good,
I
yeah.
think we have suitable interest and,
Yeah.
we'd like, sure, no
Yeah.
sense in putting this off.
Well, and the nice part is, like we say, if it doesn't prove out to be what we all expect it to be, you already have a system in place and you just go back to it.
Mhm.
Okay.
And we then continue to do what we've been doing for you anyways.
Mhm.
So it's pretty low risk.
Great.
For a pretty neat opportunity.
Well,
Awesome.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Thank you all
So
very
this-
much.
This can go in my potted plant?
Yes, you can.
Yes,
Just work it
definitely.
into the soil a little bit.
Cool.
Excellent.
Nice to see you.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sheila.
You like to
Okay, so next on our agenda is the request from the
Sure.
Holy Trinity Parish here regarding the construction of their building and water and sewer connections.
And you've got all the
Yes.
stuff.
Do you have the time?
Hello.
This is Guy.
Yes,
I'm
I have.
Roger Dignard, I'm the architect working with the parish.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see
Board
you.
member
Hi.
names are out.
Hi.
Nerlise O'Connor, Steve Temprano.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks for
Nice to
seeing
meet
us.
you.
And
Yes.
you know Jason?
Yes. Hi, Jason.
Very nice to meet
Jason
you.
Randall. Awesome.
So, we have been in receipt of a letter from the parish outlining some observations, requests, and then I am in receipt of an email between Jason and Marylise O'Connor regarding what, Jason outlined his conversations with engineers and architects and church staff. So we're fairly well versed, I think, on, hearing what's going on, so.
Okay, I'm not familiar with Jason's response, but you are in receipt of the letter from the parish, and I think they were voicing their frustration with the current situation. And I think the gist of it is the timing of the additional requests that have been asked of them in the multiple water and sewer connections and disconnections from the site. And we had gone through the planning board process, and it's nearly 2 years ago now,
Right.
where we had complete engineering drawings at that time. And we had also met with Jason through that process.
Right, and as Jason pointed out, June of 2017, he met with Brian Murphy, who's our
The planner.
our town code enforcement officer, and as
No,
well
planner.
as,
Planner.
right, as well as perhaps other folks. And, you know, I guess at that time we were discussing, Jason says, we discussed the conceptual plan for the renovation, right,
yeah.
as well as the district and town requirements for permitting. So,
Well, we had complete civil engineering documents at the time. The civil engineer and I were there for the meetings with,
Yes.
Actually, we started with Sharon.
Sharon
the
Penny.
town.
right,
Yeah.
right, the town, right.
And subsequently Brian.
Yes,
So the civil engineering plans that we were discussing at the time for the planning board are essentially the same civil engineering plans that we moved forward with. We added a few notes, made a few minor changes, including some that were requested by the Water and Sewer District, for instance, to make the connection onto Langdon Street for the new water and sewer service of the addition to the church.
right,
I believe that we were consistent, however, in saying that we were still planning on keeping the existing water and sewer that serve the existing church.
okay,
So one of the things that subsequently, I think, came up, and it was part of the Wright-Pierce detailed review a few months ago, was that they expected the disconnection of the existing church. And I think all of this and other miscellaneous requests are creating a hardship financially for the parish, because these are unanticipated costs that we did not plan on. And the budget is very tight. We've already made a number of budget cuts in order to be moving forward with the project. To try to connect the existing church through the addition for water and sewer gets quite complicated in that there is a toilet and 3 sinks
right,
in the existing church. The toilet and 1, maybe 2 sinks are in the partial basement of the church, which places it lower
right. So
than the
you're-
addition
yes.
and our potential connection
Right.
out to the street as well. So we would have to pump up
Understood.
that service, and so that's not easily done. We could probably more readily backfeed the water service to the existing church, but it would be good if we could keep the existing sewer line coming out from the church,
Right.
which would mean you have one going to School Street, one going to Langdon Street.
I'm,
Confused a little. I
go ahead.
just wasn't under the impression that we were talking about disconnecting the original.
Yeah, I mean, understand that this has all come to the board for the first time. You know, we only became aware of it recently, and so we need to create I mean, to best understand this, we need to create a timeline of what was discussed and you know, at various points in time. So, you know, there's a lot for us to
Okay,
digest
well,
here.
in terms of timeline, the civil engineer and I were under the
Is this-
distinct impression through the planning board review and approval process.
This is 2017 now.
2017,
Yes.
Right.
that we were going to be allowed to keep the existing water and sewer as serving the church, and then put in a new water and sewer serving the addition.
I see, okay.
Okay, that's
Now,
where
did
I'm
you discuss
confused.
this with Jason at that time?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
I have a
But it's
question.
been
Yes.
such a long time, I can't say absolutely what the details of the conversation.
Yes,
Somewhere,
Mel.
and maybe it's on my desk, and we talked about it earlier, there's a copy of either it's the town approval sheet.
Yes, the permit
is that
application,
still-
but I
I
believe
think
that
it's on
permit
your desk.
application
I
was,
thought I brought it in here, and somebody's got
yes,
it.
I did at
One of
least, my
friends
eyes
has
did
that.
at least land on that.
Yes, we did
Because
receive.
what Jason's comment is that he was signing it contingent upon a connection application being submitted, and it's my understanding that one hasn't been still yet
Hasn't been
Submitted.
approved yet, it was
submitted,
submitted.
but you're
Yeah.
still reviewing it.
Right, we're waiting on this last piece.
Okay.
So,
okay.
so when was this application
That was
received
August 29th. Or, wait,
of this
it
year?
was dated
August 30th.
August 3rd. You have it?
No, this is from the text of Jason's
I had your handwriting.
abstract on.
Yeah, construction is
I
underway.
wrote it in
So
here.
Yes, yeah.
it was at that time that the application was submitted.
Yeah, well, I think what we're grasping for here is the application.
It was August 28th
Okay.
is the day I received the building permit application.
Okay, yep, right here.
When did, forgive me for asking a lot of specific questions. When did construction begin here? I mean, if you're talking,
Was it July or August?
August.
August?
I think it was August 1st.
August
Yeah.
1st, yes.
okay, so,
So-
right,
You began construction before approval?
We had full permit approval as we understood it to proceed.
Well, that's what I'm, you had a permit from the town, which,
right, and then, on
Jason's
on
handwriting.
829, Jason said, building permit
But this
approval
a
is
month
contingent on,
after.
right, contingent on the submittal,
And review,
review, and
And
approval
approval.
of the district,
water and sewer, fire protection, and irrigation permits.
right,
As of 8/29/18, no connection permits have been submitted to the district.
right. So we,
As of what date?
8/29.
Oh, okay.
So, end of August, we had not received any application here to water and sewer. And I understand that water and sewer district is entirely separate from the town. We're a different entity from the town. So, although we cooperate on, and, you know, the building application does have this approval form, you know, that doesn't mean that, it means you have to come to us
Right.
to submit these things.
Well,
So,
the application was prepared and sent in, and I don't have the actual date, but it was
sometime after
shortly
that.
thereafter.
Yeah.
And we had submitted copies of the plans again, and Wright Pierce, reviewing engineers, came back
Yes.
with a list of comments. And it's through that process that we were finding some requests that we really had not previously been cued in on.
That is our process, though.
right, but it is the normal process. Anyone, whether you're building a house or you're
Right.
doing a major commercial construction, has to submit a plan. Then and only then do we submit that for
Submitted to our
engineering review.
engineers, right.
Okay,
mean, that is our
It seems to
process.
be a different process that I'm familiar with in other towns, whereas.
Has the plan been
we-
submitted yet, as of
Yeah,
yet?
Yes.
apparently after
But out?
Jason made that comment, sometime probably in September, I would guess.
Yeah, early September is
Yeah,
what I guess.
September
September.
18th, I received the full set of plans.
18th.
Okay. But
So-
those are the same set of plans that we submitted to the planning board.
Yes,
Right.
but we're a different entity than the planning board. The planning board does not submit anything to us
On your behalf.
on your behalf. It's your responsibility to fill out our permit requests and our application process. And then we submit it to our engineers review it, we submit it back to you and make changes as changes need to be. Unfortunately, this was done after you began even construction of the building, so now you have a building in the way and things are in the way, but we still have to follow through with what our engineers are telling us is appropriate for this project and the connections under the ground, correct?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the one question I have in all of this is what's driving, and maybe Jason can answer this, what's driving the request here to have one connection as opposed to two? Was that Wright Pierce's review of?
Because it's a single building, so it's one connection per building.
I see.
Right now, there's, as proposed, there will be 4 connections total for that building, 2 water and 2 sewer, including a fire protection. And that's really the driving factor, I believe, for the new water line on Langdon Street is the fire protection requirement, which would require the oversized line.
Line,
is
right.
4-inch, whereas the existing is only 3/4 on School Street, which doesn't support
Right, you can't
installation
do a fire protection on
Right,
3/4
yeah.
inch.
Because the main on this, on School Street would not be able, is not sufficient? Is that-
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought another part of the issue was capping the mains, capping the sewer connection back to the main.
Right, so the other part of it is, there were 2 existing properties, residential properties on the church's property that were demolished at some point in time.
Do we know when?
I don't know when. And as far as we're aware, the services were excavated and located. So they were not decommissioned at the time, all the way to the main, like we require. And that would be then, now fall on the burden of the church to do that.
Property
It would
owner.
be their responsibility
Right.
as the owner of the property.
It would be just like if you bought a house and found a buried oil tank, it's now your responsibility, right, to remove the buried oil tank.
Right.
And that's, I think, part of what the parish sees as a hardship in terms of something that was done a long time ago, and those houses were demolished, and probably with the participation of the water sewer district in terms of disconnecting them at that time. So
Yeah,
why
I mean,
does it fall
I-
to them now to make?
I understand that. Unfortunately, I have to take, I think the board is, its purpose is to represent the people of the district. And when I think of, I have to say to myself, how do I answer to the individual in the district, the average user, and say that, they should be paying for another individual? We have to consider all of,
Right, and I believe the
users.
parish has agreed to cut and cap those services from the old houses at the right-of-way, but not going into the street
well,
of the main.
I think we have to definitively say that, we have a set of rules and regulations that we expect our property owners and district users to abide by. It's not, we don't accept interpretations of those. I mean, we decide how that's, that's.
Well, and a
gonna
lot
work.
of it is driven by DES too, that, right, they tell us what can be done and can't be done with regard to,
Jason can say this probably better than I can, but if something's capped off X number of feet from the main, that line then is a vulnerability for the district. If it's capped at the main, then it's,
Right,
Yeah,
and then that is
yeah.
purely our, right.
then it's our sewer main.
Right.
right,
Yeah, I think what we're looking for is some compromise in terms of the list of things that need to be accomplished. And maybe we should list all of the items.
Yes,
So-
I mean,
so
I'm.
we've got a couple of old house disconnections
Right, decommissions, I'll call that a decommission issue.
for water and sewer.
Yes,
We have the existing church, which we would like to at least maintain the sewer. We could potentially backfeed the water,
right.
however. We have the
So
new
meaning you want 2 sewer lines.
2 sewer lines.
Yeah.
We have the new water and sewer line coming in from Langdon Street.
Yes.
And part of what the engineers asked for was an increase in sewer size. That's easily done. So we're
Right.
doing that. And also, there was a request for a valve on the sprinkler line, and we're doing that.
Yes.
No issue. The former parish hall was also demolished. And apparently, the water and sewer from those run through the university property.
The sewer does.
The sewer does. And the water
Goes back to School Street.
so that's yet another street connection. And so the sewer line going to the university, what was the expectation for cutting and capping that?
To the main as well. There was an old road, Highland Avenue,
Yeah.
that was taken.
Discontinued road.
Discontinued, yes, discontinued.
Given up.
And,
Discontinued,
and
that's
the responsibility is now under the purview of PSU. And there is the sewer connection from the old function hall is connected to the sewer main in that road, on Plymouth State property. So I would imagine they wouldn't want the responsibility either of having that line abandoned on their property without proper decommissioning to the main. So that was the expectation for that one as well.
Where physically is that?
Yeah, in relation, the hall, is that on the south side of the hall?
I would say
On the
that-
opposite side from
My
where?
gut is that it's gonna be south of, or north of,
North of Highland Street, so yeah, south of,
Bailey, is that Bailey House right there? I mean,
I'm not sure exactly what building that is, but
or just south of Blair Hall, there's a
manhole
main
there.
right there.
Yeah.
That hall? To share the site plan.
Right, so
we've
there's
got
Langdon, right,
School Street.
right,
This is the parish hall that was demolished, that's Blair Hall.
right.
So where is that sanitary line going?
I'm assuming this is Blair Hall, it's somewhere in this area.
Yeah, somewhere right there.
And the
Jason, make-
former Highland,
Highland
Yeah, it
Avenue
shows
is
the
right here.
manhole there.
so Blair
There's
Hall.
Blair Hall right here.
Right, it would be going somewhere in that direction.
So the expectation is wherever that sewer main is, somewhere on the Plymouth State campus, that we would have to cut and cap.
All right, I think so this is issue number 3. I think my question there is, if this is under the if this line feeds into what is now PSU's waste line, should it not be PSU who is?
Well, no, it's their
It's
street, it's our
Our
line.
line.
Oh, okay,
It's our
I
line.
want to
It
make sure I
belongs to
own
us.
to the line, okay.
The town voted to discontinue the streets and make it more walking campus,
Okay.
but we didn't ever give up the water and
Alright.
sewer lines,
Okay,
of which the university is grateful.
okay, all right, so
Since it
we are the...
supplies them with water and
all right.
sewer.
All right, so that is our decision to make, okay. Is there a precedent for having 2 connections
In one building.
in one building? I mean,
I don't know the answer to that.
You've been on the board the
Honestly, that
longest.
I'm aware of.
There's precedent to having the sewer lines capped at the mains.
right,
Right. But rather than a precedent, is it a problem?
right. I mean, if we were to grant this extra waste line, I mean, they're willing to provide water from the new hall to the church. So that would mean only an additional waste line out onto that side's the School Street. I mean, is that,
The risk to the district there is minimal because it's the responsibility of the user for the sewer main from the building.
Building to the line anyway.
all right.
So,
So that seems to me to be a reasonable thing
right.
to provide, to accept. Especially that they're giving up the water line, if they would be willing to decommission properly decommission the water
The-
line.
Well, decommission all the things that need to be decommissioned
Right.
and capped.
Right. Yeah, I think that seems fair to, but, right, I mean, ultimately, this comes down to a matter of decommissioning and
Right.
then allowance for this second connection.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Do we want to act on this evening, or do we want to defer action on this until we meet next week?
I don't see
Wouldn't mind
why we
having
can't.
some more clarity as to what we're
Just,
acting on.
what are you
I
voting
mean,
on? Exactly.
precisely.
Jason,
It
I
was
think,
verbalized pretty well, but I wouldn't mind it,
see
you
in
know,
writing.
you see in writing exactly what we're talking about.
I think
So-
Jason can probably, given the feedback you've had here tonight, right?
Mhm.
The board,
And we meet again next
compromise?
Tuesday, so we
Yeah.
could vote on it next
Is that-
Tuesday.
Right, because what you need to specify is, you know, if we're
Exactly.
decommissioning, how are we decommissioning, especially with regard to this sewer line for the former hall? Because I don't know what distance that, you know, is that 10 feet, is it 100 feet? We don't know.
Yeah, we did offer the contractor to dye test it, so that offer
Right.
still stands to find the exact location of where it's entering the main there, and then we can camera it and delineate it as well.
I see.
So
Well-
there's some things that we still need to work in conjunction with the church in order to figure out exactly what still needs to be done, because it sounds like we still don't 100% know what still needs to be done.
We know what needs to be done, just exactly where the extent is to be determined. Like I said, we offered to work with them on that.
Okay.
But
Well-
the actual decommissioning part, I believe, is clearly understood that it's to the main, wherever that may be.
Right. Well, it may be helpful, I don't know if it is, I mean, it is a separate matter in my mind as to allow this second.
Right, I mean, I think we could vote on that for sure.
Yes, I'm sure that would be helpful to the continuity of this project for them to move forward. So I would say, if we're willing to entertain a motion on that,
Yep.
I would,
Do we need a
Make
motion?
the motion then.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we allow the Holy Trinity Parish Roman Catholic Community Church in Plymouth to have 2 sewer connections for 1 building.
You want to identify the building, or?
Parish Hall and the church, right? It's one from the parish hall and one from the church. Okay.
So moved.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
And then we'll defer action on until we have some clarity on the decommissioning.
Right, because I think it would be helpful for you to know how long the lines are and where they're going and exactly where you have to be.
Because we were totally unaware of those other lines from the old houses.
Mm-hmm.
So that did not and that's the difficulty that the parish is facing, was never factored into any of the costs of the project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay,
There are other representatives here. I can't speak solely for the parish, so I don't know if they also want to say anything at this point, or we'll just wait.
Well, I
to the
spoke
chair.
with Jason when he was on site, and the one question I had is the Langdon Street was open 3 years ago, and those decommissioned sewer they were known that they were there, and they weren't taken care of then. We just became aware of it when we excavated. So my question is, if it's a burden to the rest of the community with regards to not capping them at the main, why wasn't that work done when the road was open 3 years ago? Why all of a sudden is it Holy Trinity's responsibility
we
to
do
do
any-
so?
I don't know that we have any
Yeah.
awareness of that project, but can I also have your name?
Oh, sure, Beth Morrison.
Oh, I know you.
That's good.
Jason, did we do sewer work in the road?
No, I believe
No.
that was
just
solely
a-
the
Right,
town's
that was
That
the
was a-
town,
that was
so
a-
we
See, that's the
did,
thing, like one department doesn't talk to the
Oh, no,
other.
we're not an entity of
Of
the
the
town.
town.
It's almost like a different town. We have our own governing board, we have our own annual meeting, we have our own projects. We like to cooperate with them as much as possible.
Right,
I
and
don't
it-
believe that we were involved in that road opening
Right.
at all, so we
They
wouldn't have
were-
had any awareness of it.
right, so they were just doing resurfacing of the road and straightening the road out.
And new curbs,
Yeah, and then
yeah.
putting new curbs in. There is no reason for them to come and talk to us because it doesn't have anything to do with what's underneath. They weren't disturbing our sewer lines, we weren't replacing our sewer lines, we weren't replacing water lines, so there wasn't any reason
Well, that makes
to.
sense, Judith, in the fact that, but you have to work in conjunction with each other on every project that goes through the town of Plymouth. You have to sign off on it, is my understanding, whether it's a residential or commercial.
Right,
I mean,
right,
I
but
heard you
that's-
say that here tonight.
Right, but
So-
that's different. It is. I understand the frustration because it's incredibly frustrating.
Sure.
But,
to all the boards.
you're right, for both boards. But if we are going to dig in a town road to replace sewer lines, replace water lines, we have to talk to the town. We have to make sure that we're digging where it's appropriate and we pave the roads the way we have agreed on between the two parties and things like that. If we're going to do something in a manhole that's already there in the road, we don't have to tell the town we're going into our manhole. It's our manhole, we're responsible for it. We don't have to talk to the town about doing that. If the town is going to repave the road, if the state is going to repave Fairgrounds Road or Route 3, and they are not impacting our water and sewer lines, they don't have to tell us at all. It's completely separate what's on top and what's underneath and who owns what thing.
Okay, so the second part of my frustration question is that if we have to take care of what's our responsibility within our purview of our footprint, why are we crossing town of Plymouth's road in order to go to the main? It isn't our property, so why are we responsible to do that? Because it's
And Jason can correct me and the board can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm speaking because I'm the longest board member
God bless
here.
you.
Small but long. No, I've been on the board for 20 years, so we've gone through many iterations of different things like this. But the way it works is your responsibility, my responsibility as a homeowner, your responsibility as the owner of the church property is where the pipe ties into the main. So my property on where I own my house, my sewer line goes under the road to connect on the opposite side of the road. If I had to replace my sewer line for some reason, I would be responsible for digging up my property, for getting a permit to open the road or do a trench to reconnect and
Standard operating
replace.
procedure.
Yes.
Right, but I have to go across the road. So, because it's where it connects to the main. Okay, and it's actually my water line that does that, not my sewer line. My sewer line's on my side of the house, so my side of the road, so.
Well, at least you understand our frustration a little bit. At the
Right.
11th hour, we find these two curb stops, and now we're responsible for those in addition to other things. So it seemed like the budget got blown out of the water, number one, but number two, the responsibility on the parish exponentially got a lot larger, which we weren't aware of until we excavated, so just...
Yeah.
Being a homeowner, right?
Yeah,
Well-
yes, and unfortunately, I think sometimes I will make the statement that the communication between the town and the district is not always as upfront as we would like it to be. Like, we would hope that if you were presenting a project that got approved, someone would tell you, you need to go right to the district because you are in the district, submit your plans right away so that you know what you have to do and adjust those plans accordingly. And that doesn't always happen.
Is there anything at the planning process
Oh.
within the town that...
There's a checklist. You should have been given the checklist. And on that checklist, we are on the bottom of that checklist. You
Oh, yeah,
need to go
that's-
to water and
that's what
sewer.
that page is.
So there, it is, but it's not always verbalized, right?
I think with the discussions we had at the time with the planning board and with Jason, we thought we had it covered.
Right,
We didn't
have it covered.
have
Right.
it covered. One last technical question, if I might ask. So if we have an existing sewer from here to there, and that's the main, do we have to remove the entire sewer line or simply disconnect it
You
at the main?
can disconnect it and abandon it in place with a flowable fill.
Okay,
So you pour goop in it and cap those
Mhm.
You
things.
wouldn't necessarily
So it's
have
not
to
all-
trench the whole thing.
so it's not hollow, so we don't have
Right.
to trench?
Correct.
Okay.
Render it
Render it.
flowable.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
There's, Jason's got specs on the stuff you gotta pour into it.
Fill and cap.
Fill and cap, right.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for your time this evening.
Well, before you do, could I just ask a question?
Yes.
So what was the input and responsibility, Jerry Boyle, by the way?
Yeah, I know your name.
I know you do. So what was the responsibility of the Water and Sewer District when these two houses were demolished, taken away, and capped.
If
They're
we were
capped
never
right now.
if we were never notified that the houses were being demolished and they were just being demolished, then they just were being demolished.
Well, you had to be notified because they were sold. So you had to be notified.
Well,
We're not notified
once
of
again, we're,
sales.
Yeah, we're
the
not.
town, you have to get a demolition permit from the town, but
Town.
that we would have no way of, as a separate entity, we would never see any of
But when
those.
the properties were sold from the homeowners to the Roman Catholic Bishop of Manchester, this entity was notified.
We would have
Because
had
you are
a new
always
customer.
notified on every sale and transfer of property.
Actually, no.
I don't,
No,
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
that's
so.
true,
No, that's not
Jerry.
true,
No?
Jerry.
I don't know.
What
Used
would-
to be.
What would
Well,
be
When I was
true?
the attorney for this group here, the Water and Sewer District in the 80s, that was the case. I don't know about now.
We- I don't know if that's true now.
It is
We
not
can,
true.
we can look into that, but
Yeah.
right now, we just don't know.
Okay.
What happens is the new property owner or the realtor calls and says it's gonna be a transfer,
Correct.
and then you have a new customer.
Somebody has to come in, the new customer has to come in and sign up and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Right?
Which the
But that
diocese,
doesn't mean we know that a house is
Right.
getting
which the
demolished. It
diocese
means,
had to do, of course.
it means there's a transfer of ownership, new person paying the water bill, if you will.
Well, there would have been a disconnection of the water service, however.
Somebody had
That's
to
true.
disconnect it. Somebody had to do it, and it's not the contractor, it would have been the Water and Sewer District. Somebody had to disconnect that.
Well, shut off a valve.
Shut off the
Yeah, it
valve.
was-
Somebody
you're
had to
right.
do it. So you can't say that the district didn't know about it.
Well,
Because
sometimes
the district-
contractors go in and turn off valves when they don't have authority.
Well,
Jason and I have been
You're
here
right.
almost
They do, but-
almost the same amount of time, and I haven't heard of it, and I think Jason would have records of it.
When was the sale?
The sale would have been in the late 80s or early 90s
Oh,
on both of them.
oh.
Right, yeah,
No,
you know, we're
I don't-
talking
I don't
about
have any
things,
knowledge of that.
right? I mean, we can look
That's
back in
prior
records,
to-
we have records, but, you know, if nobody, yeah.
I mean, one thing maybe that is different, hopefully better, is that Jason and I and this board are trying to do things, well, better. And if there was failure on the part of our predecessors, we're not going to continue that.
And there were 3 properties that were talking, right?
Two. Two houses.
But there were
So-
two on Langdon and one more on School Street, where the new
I think
construction,
you're right. I think there were a total of 3 there.
Yeah.
But,
because there was a structure next to the church
yep,
that was actually a School Street address, and then there were 2 on Langdon Street. And I think one of them had been destroyed by a fire,
I think you're right.
Yes,
structure fire.
I think you're
And
right.
that precipitated the sale to
Yep.
the church.
Yep, I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, as we move forward,
And the property across the street, which is now a college parking lot. That was about the same time.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
yes,
Yeah.
question,
So,
yes.
my name is Deacon Mike Guy. I wrote most of that letter.
Yes,
I just need another understanding, I guess. So, as far as you're aware, there is no water and sewer department in the town?
No, no, they
Okay, so I don't know where
Yeah.
you all live. I think I know where Jerry lives, but,
live at Campton now.
yeah,
I don't live there
I didn't
anymore.
mention it out loud. I thought you did.
I don't live on
in
Island
Canton,
Street
I know. In about 13 communities in New Hampshire, there are these little municipal animals called village districts. This one was started in 1898 as a fire district, fire protection district. It was called the Fire Village, Plymouth Fire Village. Village.
Fire district,
Fire
village fire
Precincts.
precinct, yeah,
actually.
something like that.
And in the 1960s, it added a sewer portion. So in this community, Plymouth Town of government takes care of fire, police, library, parks and rec, all the things you can think of that are typical municipal services, except water and sewer.
That's us.
This community formed through the legislature, this village district, and it has all of the responsibilities and authorities of a board of select people. This commission does. It's just a different name, same rules, same right to know law, same authorities. If it says selectmen in the statute, that same authority conveys to the board. So, I don't know, take what other town, usually it's a Department of Public Works, and you have water.
Well, we
sewer.
have North Conway is separate.
Right, but I mean, in a typical town.
Like Hanover.
Right.
I think you're getting pretty deep in that.
Yeah, that's
To
fine.
make an analogy, the relationship is similar to, you have a town of Plymouth, you have a water and village sewer, and you have a school board. They're all three different governments. They're similar, they have different responsibilities, but they don't necessarily interact with one another
On everything.
on everything. So that's how sometimes a lot of information is kind of dropped in between the two parts. So a school board and the board of selectmen we all have different responsibilities, but we're not necessarily all in line with each other, and we don't necessarily report to one another on a regular basis. So that's
So your funding is solely on your own through water and sewer?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we get no,
No
we have-
No taxes.
Taxes do
Nope.
not-
Okay,
Nope.
it's civics lesson.
Strictly
Yep.
solar.
it's a
funding.
common misunderstanding, yes.
Okay,
And we don't also serve the whole geographical town.
just the,
We have a subset of,
We're a subset of the town's boundary.
it's the village piece.
I live in Plymouth, but
We
I
are
don't
the
live in the
village.
district.
well, it's a little bit more
so
than the
not
village piece,
every
but
single taxpayer is one of our ratepayers.
Okay.
and that has to do with hydraulics and stuff like that. That is just
It's
too
kind of like
much.
the co-op and the electric company, Eversource.
Right,
Depends
right.
on which line goes where. Okay.
The
Correct,
wisdom
yes.
of our four
Okay.
mothers and fathers.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Joey. Oh, yeah.
Hi, Chris West.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Is there any old business?
Thanks for moving the chair.
No, but there's budget, well, there's budget deliberations before that.
Have a
if you
good
wanna make
evening.
any. If you
Right.
wanna-
Okay. I don't know how much left in you, but
Yeah. Well, we have one purchase rec. Take care of
that
that.
I can do.
I
Now-
make a motion we accept the purchase rec for $2,000 for the Lakes Region fence.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So this is, the one PO is $2,000 payable to Lakes Region Fence, and this is to repair some damage from a tree that fell down over on Foster Street. And where is that little piece of paper with that,
Where's the
With what?
PO?
the PO?
PO.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
saving it.
since there's only one,
Saving it for
yeah.
you. I get
Well,
off
Steve,
in
go
the-
ahead, we'll-
get off
we'll
in the
go.
civics lesson. So we meet next week?
Right.
Yes.
Do we really want to save the budget deliberation while we're having a hearing?
I'm happy to go forward. You got,
I don't
there
know,
are-
how much is there that we have to talk
Well,
about?
there are the things that we mentioned last meeting, which would be the paving, the dewatering now is its own animal, the pole barn, insulation of the buildings, and the headworks, wet well, door, and platform installation. I mean, and do we want to put money into capital reserve or not? There is money in the budget now for that purpose.
Well, I
So
thought,
things from the list.
I mean, quickly for me, I thought about some of the stuff that was on the list, and right now, until we talk about rates and what people think about that, I would say nothing goes on that budget that isn't 150% necessary.
Well, I feel strongly in favor of the truck replacement, because that's just it's something that's used daily. I mean, I think
But that's the 150%
Okay.
necessary.
Okay, all right.
Truck replacement stays.
I
thought that's where you were last
Thought we
week.
were, paving was out.
Yeah, I
Paving
felt,
was out.
we felt strong, I think that's, we have a vote or a
Consensus?
consensus on the truck, yes, I think that's important.
The paving's out, the dewatering right now is out if we're moving forward with
Right, we have an alternate
alternate plan.
plan, right.
So,
Then there's the pole barn. insulation for the buildings and the door and platform installation.
Well, I have voiced my opinion to Mel about the pole barn, that I felt like a concrete block solution was far more cost-effective. I mean, but I agree with Judy, I'm not even sure I want to talk about
I don't
any
know
expenditure there
if we
until...
can talk about any
Yeah.
expenditure with millions of dollars until
Yeah.
we see what people have to say.
Yes.
Just whole then? Or,
When's our second hearing?
January 8th?
Oh, crud.
That's a budget,
Well, I mean,
that's a typical budget hearing
Right, but
timeframe.
we're having the meeting next week as our first potential
And I'm not-
hearing.
I'm calling that a public meeting.
Okay, all right.
And the letters have gone out for that?
Yes.
Yes, good.
So
Have we-
those are my thoughts.
All right, so we're gonna leave things, those numbers are in the budget as the budget stands, but once I get
We gotta
clear,
back them out, some
once I
of
get
them.
clear direction, we'll,
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sensing we're all slumping to the end of this
Yeah,
meeting here.
I'm starting to yawn.
Yeah, having not eaten dinner, I'm,
okay. You guys did well tonight.
I make a motion we adjourn.
yes.
So moved.
Those in
Done.
favor, yes.
Aye.
Aye.